I'm gonna turn these iconic games realistic using Photoshop. Starting with this game called Good Slice. This game has 100,000 ratings with 4.6 stars, so that's pretty good. And I started the design by making the knife, but sadly my dog ate the footage. So we're gonna start by copying the layers on the lemon with the pen tool, and once that was done, I added some small shadows. But now let's copy the color of the inside of the lemon and then add a lemon texture to the outside. Now I'll just take this lemon PNG and cut out some slices to warp them into the right place, and then did that 5 more times until I thought it looked good, but I don't like how the inside has no texture, so I'll take the inside of an apple and use that for the texture, and this apple will definitely be back later. I'm gonna copy the shapes of these little fruits, and I don't really know what these are since they're cut off, but I'm gonna assume this is an orange or a mango or something, and this is a lemon. I'm also just gonna make these green ones leaves, so after copying the shapes and colors, I'm gonna add the textures on top of them. But now let's copy the shape of the orange and the watermelon. I'll put a watermelon texture inside and then cut out a few seeds from this image and place them on the watermelon in the right positions. I'm also going to add a little red on top of them to make it look like they're inside the watermelon. But now let's add the textures to the outside and put them at the right angles and then fade these together. I'll change the color of the inside part, but now I'm going to add a bunch of highlights on the side. And then add the wind streaks coming from the lemon. I'll add some noise to the inside part of the orange just to add some texture, but now let's also put some textures on the outside and then warp them into the right positions. Let's also put a few shadows in the orange's butt and then add the apple texture to the inside of the orange. And if you're not subscribed, don't forget to press that button. I'll use the pen tool to cut some shapes out in the orange and then add some small effects to make it look a little bit more natural. And finally, I'll add some shadows coming from the watermelon above it. So this is my realistic version of the Good Slice icon. That fruit slicing app was cool, but let's move on to a more iconic fruit slicing game, and this one is called... I'm gonna start off by adding some wood for the background and correcting the colors, but next I'll add a watermelon, warp it into the right shape, and use the pen tool to cut off the bottom. I'll add some shadows, but let's do the same thing for the bottom half and add the inside of the watermelon with the warp tool. I duplicated one of the seeds, but next I'll add the highlights and shadows, and then start working on the blade. So I'll copy the shape and add a bevel and emboss to make it look more sharp, and manually add some of the darker parts. Now let's add a silver texture on top and a shadow to the right. Now let's copy the shape of the watermelon juice, and to be honest, I never really liked watermelons, which is a little bit ironic because I'm black, but let me know if you like watermelons in the comments, and don't forget to like it. Anyways, I'll add a gradient to the watermelon juice and start adding some highlights for some more depth. I'm also going to add a motion blur since this is moving, which will make it look a little bit more realistic. But now let's copy the rest of the liquid that's on the background, so I'll do that with the brush tool and add some lighter parts and then blur it. I'll do the same with the other liquid and make it a little bit see-through, and then added some motion blur onto those parts as well. Finally, I'll add a little spark at the end of the sword. There's no way I just said that. And then add a camera raw filter. So this is Fruit Ninja, but realistic. I still think it looks a little bit cartoonish, but I think that's because of the shapes of some of the liquids and stuff, but I still like it, so let's move on to the next app. This next app has 420,000 ratings with an average of 5 stars, which is kind of crazy. And as you can see, this cover is a bird, so let's make this bird realistic. So first I'll add the main color and use the ellipse tool to add the orange circles. Next I'll copy the top of the head and also copy the eye shape. And after that I'll use a hairbrush to make everything, well, more hairy. And one thing I'm not very good at, which I think you guys have probably noticed, is making realistic eyes. So I'm gonna try a new strategy this time by drawing some white lines on the inside of the eyes and then blurring it to make it look like a reflection, but I'll come back to those in a little bit. For now, I'll just copy the beak and add a real beak as the texture, add a slight camera raw filter, and also change the color. I'm also gonna remove all that texture where the mouth is opened, so I'll draw over it and then add some depth and a tongue. I'll make it look like there's fur on top of it, and finally I'll come back to the eyes and try to make them look a little bit better. I also added some slight shadows for some more depth, but here is the realistic bird icon. I like this design, and I think the eyes look a lot better than what I usually make, so I'll try to do something similar in the next cover. The final app I'm gonna make realistic actually isn't that popular, but it's based off of something really popular that a lot of you might like called Dumb Ways to Die, but this game is actually called Dumb Ways to Dash. So I'll start off by recreating the shape of the ground and then also make the finish line and the checkered pattern. Next, I'll use the pen tool to trace over the character, and then do the same for the different parts on the swinging blade and all the different colors on it. I'm also going to recreate the mouth and add some reflections onto the eyes, and then I'll add the blue color to the background. Now let's add the texture onto the ground, and then add a bunch of textures onto the part holding up the axe, and a circular blade texture onto the blade. But now let's just add some highlights and shadows. After that's done, I'll trace over the blood and make a clipping mask onto the blade, as well as adding this little drop and adding a motion blur and liquefying it to make it look like it's moving. I'll add a small highlight to the edge of the ground, but now let's trace over the character's helmet and put some wood on it. Next, I'll add some faint textures to the antlers and then add some shadows to go with it. And I'm also going to make a little hole for the antler to go into, and then add some highlights onto the character. Finally, I'll create a little skin texture and warp it around the character's body, and then do the same with the arms and legs. And once that's done, I'll finally blend it in with the body and add some shadows. So this is Dumb Ways to Dash, but realistic. Let me know which design is your favorite in the comments. I think mine might be the fruit slice one, but don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos in the future.